Hello, everybody, and welcome to this panel. I am very excited to be moderating this panel with very interesting and exciting panelists. I will introduce them in a moment. First, very quickly to myself, I'm Michelle Aliénor. I am one part of Collective Photosensitive. We're a very small collective based in Bern, and we organize talks with photographers that don't get the visibility they deserve. And out of this, we got the opportunity to host a few artist talks during Africa Basel and this panel. To the panelists today, we have with us in the middle only two de Vos. You are based in Johannesburg. You are an artist and one of the founders and the art director of BNAP Foundation. Yes. BNAP Foundation is a nonprofit organization dedicated to fostering growth and sustainability of emerging artists in Southern Africa's art landscape, delivering comprehensive support to artists through and improving the art ecosystem. We're very excited to have you on board today.
Thank you, Michelle.
Then we have Richard Mudariki, all the way to the right. You are a Zimbabwean artist and the founder of ArtHarare. ArtHarare is an exhibition space, a showroom for contemporary Zimbabwean art. And by collaborating with art institutions, hosting Pan-African exhibitions, and participating in international fairs, ArtHarare presents and celebrates Zimbabwean contemporary art on a global stage. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Michelle.
And last but not least, we have Gaurav Nyogi with us from Hybrid Project Space, based in Basel. Hybrid Project Space is an interdisciplinary research collective and creative platform dedicated to fostering inclusivity, accessibility, and diversity in arts and cultural spaces in Basel. The collective amplifies diverse perspectives by designing strategies to challenge cultural norms and by increasing visibility of process-oriented formats and actors addressing questions of participation and diversity in arts and cultural spaces. Thanks for making it.
Thank you.
So today we'll be speaking about Beyond the White Cube, artist-led organizations, and kind of focusing on the local context you all find yourselves in and the tension you feel and move in with the global context and how you navigate all these challenges and chances. And I would love to first focus on the local context a bit. So to open, I'd love to ask you all if you can share a bit more about the local context your organizations find themselves in. Who runs the art world in your local context, and what were your organizations reacting to when you founded them? Yes. Whoever wants to start.
Shall I start?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. I think obviously Basel has quite an exceptionally dense and internationally connected art ecosystem. And I think there's so many institutions, foundations, galleries, heirs, collectors that all play such a significant role in shaping this cultural discourse. While this kind of, creates a lot of incredible opportunities, I think there is a bit of some barriers to access this. It often depends on kind of existing networks, your familiarity with the institutional language and stuff, and basically an understanding of the unwritten social codes. And I think this is how kind of hybrid really kind of came to be from this, is a reaction to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you say, also when we're talking about the white cube, and maybe for people who don't really know what the white cube is, it's like this theory around the modern arts gallery, and it is often described as a neutral, white, sterile place with an appearance that fits that description, and also the demeanor being formed around that. And it often excludes social and political contexts in which and the art finds itself and effectively blocking out the real world. How do you observe this phenomenon reality in Basel, and how do you try to counter it in hybrid project space or your iterations?
I think for me, like the white cube is not just like an architectural space, but it's almost like a way of thinking. And like as a trained architect, I'm interested like less in like the object and more kind of like the space that it creates around it and the conditions that kind of come from that. And I think the same can be kind of said for cultural spaces. And at Hybrid, we really are really interested in like kind of designing these environments that invite the participation and kind of approach it with curiosity and or like collective exchange instead of just passive observation. So I think hybrids kind of, I would say, like counter this the neutrality of the white cube is often by designing the situations or any mediation or participation work. We try to create really opportunities for encounters between the people that come and strangers who might not otherwise would interact. And I think, I mean, a great example would be we did this project at Kunstmuseum a couple of years ago for When We See Us, and it was the shared table that really brought together this conversation. And we worked with those local tufting artists in Basel to create a tablecloth that was very tactile and it was tufted. So as these strangers kind of came together for this luncheon at the Kunstmuseum, they were interacting with it, and it was a very playful approach to kind of break the ice. And as the conversations kind of unfolded, so I think our goal is always to kind of at Harvard to kind of create the conditions and to really foster conversations around with strangers. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Maybe moving on to you, Ulrich, too. Can you elaborate a bit on your local context that you find yourself in and why BNAP came to be as a foundation? What did you react to?
So I'm just going to go into what we are, what we do, and how we came to be, right? So we are basically a nonprofit organization that is dedicated or highly focused on fostering pathways and opportunity for emerging artists, in particular young and emerging artists. We are about cultivating their voices, creative identity, their part, the direction that they want to take as artists, and then you just help them package that and mentor them in how you can sustain that in a professional industry. So, and we do that through workshops, residencies. We have an annual residency, which is the Blessing Ngobeni Art Prize. And we also do that through incubating them into our network. So how it came to be, there's three founders, which is myself, Blessing Ngobeni, and Teresa Firmino Kutala. And the vision came with Blessing Ngobeni, and for him, he's very passionate about giving back to the community and helping people. And for him, it was about helping and giving back to the community while he's still alive. He did it to become famous after his death, and NPOs or foundations get started in his name in his death. So he wanted to give back and contribute while he's still alive. And for me personally, I'm very much an activist in almost everything that I do. And I always want to advocate for a better way of doing things, especially from my lived experiences and lessons learned. And at the time, I was already involved in an organization that is very, very similar. But then I couldn't do both, then it was like a conflict of interest. So I had to decide, and I chose the Besingobeni Art Prize Foundation because given our network as a collective, it had a better successful rate, and I still got to be an activist through the foundation. And then in terms of how we are hybrid, it's I think for us, we do not wait for recognition or acknowledgement and validation. We create our own opportunities, and I think that in itself makes us hybrid. And because we are not a commercial entity, we do not have the pressure to I don't know, maybe groom or cultivate our artists to do what is trending or maybe what is the correct jargon in order to succeed. It's really about what the artist wants for themselves and helping them to package their voice and creative identity and helping them maintain sustainable um, careers out of that.
Maybe a quick follow-up question. I also saw that you also host a lot of panels at BNAP where you talk about women in art, where you talk about whiteness in art in the South African context also. How does that kind of tie into the work that the foundation does?
Uh, it's probably because a lot of the team is women and Black women. And I think also by virtue of being a Black woman who is an art practitioner, or already you become engaged, but by default, you become engaged into that political landscape. So I don't think we necessarily sit down and speak about whiteness and blackness. It's about how we navigate as existing Black women, and also with the footprints, like with every step that we take and the footprints that we leave behind, how do we make better pathways for the women who would come after us?
Thank you. Richard, also you. What's your local context where ArtHarare came to be? What did you react to? And also maybe you could talk a bit about where ArtHarare is based geographically. You're based in Cape Town, focusing on Zimbabwean art. How do you bring these two places together? Yeah, and what challenges do you maybe also face having these two kind of geographical locations of working? And where is your biggest kind of place of influence, maybe also? A lot of questions.
As a full load. Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here this year. Last year I couldn't come, so
Happy to.
very happy to be here. So if I can maybe celebrate the context of Zimbabwean contemporary art, I come from a country that is very much active in contemporary art that began a few decades ago with sculpturing tradition called the Sona sculpture that later on moved to a very much a painting tradition that was mostly influenced by the colonial environment at the time, which was Zimbabwe. But at the time, they also developed very well-established institutions. We have a national gallery that has three state galleries in three provinces in the country. We also have privately held private art galleries. We have two art schools in Zimbabwe, the National Gallery Visual Art School, as well as the Harare Polytechnic. So there is really an infrastructure that has been created in Zimbabwe, and many of the artists that are successful internationally have gone through these institutions and have received, I think, one of the best education in terms of art education on the continent, in the country itself. But we had the unfortunate reality that our country went through a little bit of economic upheaval, and that led to many of these institutions finding it difficult to survive and the artists themselves to thrive in the context of Zimbabwe, which led to many of us migrating to other countries where we were looking for communities for us to thrive in, where we could showcase our work, where we could tell the story of artists as artists from Zimbabwe. And in that context, we have artists, I think, in South Africa, which was a neighboring country, that We have built a very strong network with our compatriots in South Africa, but we've also had artists that have thrived in the US and also here in Europe. And I think that has been the sort of the nexus of what ArtHarare was established. Was I also migrated because I was looking for a community. I'm a painter by practice, and moved looking for a community of like-minded people who would support what I was doing, and realized then that there is these voids that is sort of speaking separately around the world about what contemporary art in Zimbabwe is and what we are really saying about some of the messages we portray in our work. And then COVID prevented the opportunity for us to come together. I think everything went digital in 2020, and it presented an opportunity for these artists that are sitting in North America, here in Europe, in Zimbabwe itself, and in other parts of the continent to come together online. And what was very unique in all of these artists that we work with, they all came from Harare, which is the capital city of Zimbabwe. And I had obviously done a phase where I see that a setting is very much crucial in supporting artists as we have here at Basel or at Paris or at London. And I decided then to add the word art to Harare, the city, where it was a meeting point for many artists before they sort of migrated, hence the name ArtHarare. So we launched in 2020 as an online platform, and we held our first exhibition at the end of 2020, which was literally something that hasn't happened in Zimbabwe for like is all the artists have been practicing in separate parts of the world, and in this exhibition, all of us had a unified voice, and all of us had the opportunity to show ourselves to the world. Albeit it was online, and we sort of thought that it was important that we have a voice that represents the true sort of unique perspectives coming from Zimbabwe. And then from there, when we started creating programs that led us to who we are today, a contemporary platform that highlights and celebrates contemporary art from Zimbabwe.
Thank you so much. You already spoke to it now, to collaboration and bringing different voices together, different artists together. How do you experience this a little bit too when it comes to collaboration and community around artist-led organizations in the South African context?
I think for us, for our foundation to have survived this long, because this year is actually our 10th anniversary, it has been through countless collaborations. I think we had to decide, okay, what does monetary value mean to us in order to implement successful projects and exhibition? And it's not always in the form of cash, and then some people rate the services or other forms of resources to us. So we have led from the practice of collaborating with many entities, even outside of the art industry, and because for us, it's about also seizing opportunities. We had to also think outside the traditional forms of art and art making, art presentation, and occupying and inhabiting spaces and buildings that normally wouldn't be occupied within uh, the industry.
Thank you. Um, Something the white cube as it really stands for is how it decides what is worth showing and what is not in exhibition spaces and in the art landscape and more generally. And I think your initiatives both really highlight very beautifully like a specific part of the art landscape and brings it to the forefront. How do you feel this visibility kind of influences contemporary African art? Can you see a shift happening in your surroundings or even more globally?
I think there's a shift that happens all the time because artists are documenters of history, artists are documenters of current affairs. And given what's happening within my country and within the continent, how people are navigating, facing challenges, surviving, or just living, artists become the voices, and their artworks become the reflection of that. So it's not necessarily. I think the current affairs that happen within the country or the continent is what plays a huge influence in terms of what is going to shape the way art is headed, because art is an expression of everyone's voices. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe if I could chip it in there. There's something, obviously, I'm a practicing artist myself, and I lead an artist-led organization, which is ArtHarare. But what I've observed in my home country is that many artists, because we have this traditional model, which is obviously the white cube galleries. But over the past 10 years, there have been artists that have been successful in their own practices and careers, and been successful here in Europe, and they go back to Zimbabwe or to the continent and start their own spaces. They are both spaces for education, because then they get young artists that they mentor. They're also a space where they are presenting studios for these artists, or a space where they create opportunities for artists to create new work, about being mentored by the established artists. And then they've also become places where they exhibit these artworks. So they've created a new kind of an ecosystem, especially in Zimbabwe, and I know in South Africa as well. My friend Nelson Makamwe has his own space, and as well as many other artists. I know Kaloki in Kenya also has his own space. So I think on the continent, there is now this realization that there is also an opportunity of an alternative model to the white cube, where the artists themselves are saying, well, we know how the system has worked. We've gone internationally. We have participated in it. I think I'm also very much aware of my environment. Let me create a space and develop the next generation of emerging or established artists who are looking for a space to showcase their work. So I think that trend, I don't know if I would call it a trend, but it's something that's happening. In particular in Zimbabwe, I know we have more than 7 artist-led institutions, and I'm just one of them, which I think is something that is very encouraging, because these are the people that are really much engaged in the contemporary. These are the many people that are really engaged in trying to support their local communities and artists.
I just add to that, what used to make a successful artist is drastically changing. Like the formula that we used to follow. Okay, if you want to be a seasoned artist, this is the path that you need to follow. I think the conversation and the method around that is changing. So I think what is considered contemporary art or African art right now is no longer controlled by the institutions and the big galleries, because you are getting more independent artists that are building a brand that is bigger than the institution and the gallery. So I think right now the artists themselves are having more of a say in terms of what is art, what is contemporary, what is African art, and it's no longer solely controlled by um, the the monopoly, rather.
I'm curious on that because I think in the context of Basel, there are so many institutions and so many galleries that are so, I think, I would say, kind of create those barriers for emerging artists or kind of collectives or as a kind of young collective at Basel. So I'm curious because I think the idea that you have more autonomy as artists or collectives there is quite refreshing because there's a lack of more institutional kind of uh,
to say they don't exist, but then there is a shift that is happening, and everything begins with the shift. You know, I don't know this side in like in Europe, but then definitely in South Africa, there's such an influx of uh, independent artists, and now before when you spoke about a gallery or being represented by a gallery, the conversation was, um, like, how do I get there? Who do I meet? Like, what is the criterion? Which still exists, but then there's also other conversations that are happening of actually, um, I am not product of the gallery because being an artist is a business. You are a brand. So you working with a gallery is a partnership. It's a collaboration. So what are you bringing to the table? If you are going to say, I'm taking 50% plus bet, or what justifies that 50%? So more and more artists, are navigating from a space of not necessarily romanticizing the arts as like, oh, I'm an artist, and I'm a product of this gallery. Rather, I am a brand, and I'm in partnership with these institutions. And as I said in the beginning, it's about not waiting for that validation and creating your own opportunities. So for me, I'm witnessing more artists successfully existing outside of these institutions, and because of that, I feel like it is automatically changing the landscape of what makes a successful artist. And I feel like the artists, the actual art practitioners are now, they now have a bigger voice in terms of what is really considered as contemporary, what is considered as African art.
Yeah. And maybe if I could add as well. So I think the opportunity exists that the institutions are not there and the artists, who I'm saying, especially in Zimbabwe, have traveled, have been in many spaces around the world, and they see that these institutions don't exist in our home countries, and then they create them. And I'm kind of also thinking that there's been so many, as a relator said, so many shifts. There's not only in the arts. We can always look, especially after the pandemic. There's been shifts, obviously, all affected by technology and everybody talking about AI. But you could see how people operated before has all shifted. How to order a taxi has changed, how sort of brick and mortar businesses have changed. And I think that is somehow also happening in general in the creative sector as well. So many artists sort of creating a brand and realizing that they have the power and the authority, they are the creator of that product, which is a product that is an audience too.
Thank you. I also feel like what you said in the Swiss context, I mean, a lot also of the funding of the resources comes out of the cantons of the state. And it's really hard to get money as young organizations. It's a lot of work you have to put in. How do you see this in your home countries when it comes to resources, when it comes to economics in the end of having to make these initiatives work, to fund it, literally.
Yeah, I think funding has always been an issue, but especially I'll speak for ArtHarare, we had the opportunity, obviously, of starting at a year where everything was online. So the barriers of getting a white space didn't exist because the whole art world was looking at art online. And we would say, well, look at Zimbabwean contemporary art online, and this is our space. So I think that's how we started. And then as we sort of, it was as the COVID pandemic sort of sorted out and people wanted to come into physical space, we kind of thought of doing pop-ups. So where we could then know that, for example, in Zimbabwe or in Zambia or in London or in here in Basel, we would know that the people are coming for this major event. we then also attract them to come up to our pop-up. So it was a way of strategically thinking of how we could not go into the traditional models, which are obviously very expensive and very hard things, a lot of capital, and rather rethink models where we could still showcase with our limited resources, but have the same impact as if this was a white cube organization, say type. So the challenges still exist. Obviously, you still need to have the artists have the opportunity for them to present their work professionally, have them also travel, have them create artworks that are really important. But I think the opportunity exists when they get opportunities to then be invited to other art fairs, and the commercial element starts, and they themselves generate income to advance their careers themselves. So kind of like a stepping stone, but a continuous stepping stone, because you worked with them not once off, but throughout their careers. So ArtHarare then becomes like a collaborator for their careers. And one of the things we have also done is that we work with established artists as well as emerging. So then there's that sharing also of knowledge, resources between different types of different levels of artists in their careers.
I completely agree with Richard, but I think it's a shared change. It's funding is very difficult, but I do think it's also about consistency. You know, regardless of whether you get that funding or not, the work on the project still has to continue, because it's easier to get funding once the product exists and you can show that you are able to survive and manage regardless. So we have to be consistent to the point where they will knock on your doors rather than me knocking on their doors. And it's also, I mean, for us as the foundation, we had to be like, we had to be like water. Sometimes we had to be an ice block. Sometimes we had to evaporate, let the clouds take condensation, fall back down like the rain. Sometimes it was a storm, and sometimes it was calm as a stream. So it's really about adaptability, and if the conventional ways of getting money does not exist, how else can you make the vision come to life? So it's about you continuously have to adapt and to think outside the box. But I also think that as when I say this, I speak for South Africa, the there is a lack of art awareness, art education in terms of understanding art and understanding the value of art, because the people with the money are they. Like, I'm not talking about government and the government's responsibility. I'm talking about like the private sector. So you find people in very high positions or companies that could make a difference, but because there is a lack of art understanding and art awareness, we are unable to access those funds. So I think it's also about actively, like wherever you go as an artist, as an art practitioner, educating the people around you, because you never know who you're speaking to, right? So educating the people around you and informing them about art, the value of art, and how the role it plays in the economy, and the role it would pay if they were to start a private collection. And then I think by actively doing that, you start building a network that can be able to sustain your organization outside of the conventional forms of funding.
Yeah. Did you want to react to this, or
I mean, it's like really at Hybrid, we're kind of drawn to like very explosive projects because like how our funding works. Sometimes when we first started, we had a research grant, like we were approached and commissioned for projects. So each kind of iteration that we do is always very much tied to the commission or for where the money is coming from to basically fund the project. So we always kind of struggle with this internally at Hybrid. Also, like how do we do projects that are geared for us without the restrictions that come from like funding outside or commissions from other institutions.
Totally. And also what we talked about a bit in our call before this panel was also this thing that you, at least, you're not in a space.
Yeah.
You're hybrid. You can move. You all have jobs next to hybrid project space. While you have to fund the space, you have to fund everything you're offering to these artists. So yeah, there's a different
We have
kind
a
of
little bit of malleability because we get to come into an institution for a short period of time and then kind of, almost like a little parasite, and then kind of encourage with our approach. And we have a very, like we have a 16 member, and we all come from very different backgrounds with different disciplines. And I think that's this just interdisciplinary like approach for us is pivotal to every project we do. So we always find that like when we kind of get approached by an institution or a project and how you can take this approach of hybrid and apply it to in their context.
Really. And I think it's so interesting right now, this difference in the sense that in your context, there's a lot of building new. There's this confidence of, hey, we can build outside of these institutions. While you are working in the institutions, are even being invited in by the institutions. And I would really like to talk about that a little bit more, maybe also in this example of Liste. Yeah, maybe you can talk about what exactly you did there and what you're aiming to do with that.
Of course. So this year we were approached by the we were commissioned to do like a mediation program, and from that it was basically a list of thoughts for a list day essentially, and we wanted basically offer the viewers kind of like a parallel layer of attention. So something that you normally don't really look at when you travel through fairs, all revealing kind of the hidden structures and the hidden labor, like the people that you see and then the people that you don't, and the art handlers that put up the artwork versus the woman taking away the trash. So really, I mean, this is the booklet. You can open it. And so we were really interested in kind of like the conditions around this day and to see who gets this access. And kind of like part of Hybrid's kind of ethos is we approach every project with like this playfulness, and we find this playfulness lets us be kind of critical of the space and of the institution. And the goal of this was really we wanted to shift kind of the viewer's attention from really the individual artworks that are enlisted to more kind of really the systems that are behind them. And it was really important for us to make it quite accessible. So each booklet is also, no matter what project we do, it has to be accessible for all. I think that always also comes down to the language that's used and to really make it available to everybody, from a grandmother to like an art critic to our goal is always to have kind of the most accessible form of distribution and language.
Thanks. We're also already running out of time. I would have had so many more questions, but you guys had so many interesting things to say. I think I just want to zoom in on where we are right now for a second. In a very global environment, Arts Basel is happening. We are at Africa Basel. And on the question of access, Richard, last year you couldn't make it. Your visa was denied. This year, other two artists couldn't make it because very last minute they didn't get their visas. And this is like a massive challenge for careers of artists from the global south, kind of inflicted by really biased restrictions by migration practices from the Swiss side or the European side. And I was just wondering, because art fairs in my understanding, they really market themselves with this idea of internationality, of bringing everyone together, of connecting. And what is the tension for you in this field of internationality and the discourse around international fairs and international art spaces? If there's like such an uneven accessibility that surrounds it.
Yes, it is. I had the lived experience of being denied access. I've been in practice, having practiced for 20 years as a painter and having shown internationally. I think what is happening now is that many artists are practicing on international level. They have shows and art fairs happening almost every month in the world, and some of the artists on the global south literally have 4, 5, 6 art fairs in 1 year. And I think it's such an important aspect that they be present to network, to exchange ideas, to create opportunities for themselves, and to engage with their audiences. And where we have this notion that the art world is so inclusive, but in reality, it's very much exclusive, depending on where you come from. I've always had the debate that some of the artists that are successful in their careers, they're successful because they have access to many other spaces that they are able to go, and then but maybe there might be even similar artists from the global south that are also very much talented and doing important work but denied access, and hence their careers suffer. So I think that's something that many artists have highlighted in their work, and something that I'm also continuing to do with my work, to sort of highlight, because I think many audiences might not be aware, but it's this background that is happening when artworks are hanging in a booth in a fancy space in an art fair. But there's so much pushback, there's so much challenges that are happening, there's so much issues that the artist has to deal with for them to be present or for their work to be celebrated.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. I think it's also always such a difficult question to bring in because we are not the migration services. Us as Swiss citizens can do our best in our democratic system. But I find it so important to highlight because, as you say, a lot of people don't know about these challenges. So thank you for highlighting that survey. Did you want to add something on this?
There are some things that are beyond our control. As he said, it's a whole different department. All we can do is speak about it and raise awareness about it, but we do not necessarily have the power to change it. You can just keep trying again and hopefully break those barriers that prevent you, yeah, from having that access. But I think it's also it's got well, speaking for the foundation, it's important for artist-led organizations themselves to have access. So I think for us to be here at Africa Basel is amazing because we work with a lot of independent artists, and yes, eventually they become signed by galleries, but then we work with artists at the inception of their careers. So by us as organizations and entities having access, it allows them to have access. So it's like a whole chain that is connected. So I think I'm grateful that we were able to be here and be part of the art thing.
Yeah, on that note, go visit Richard at the New Global Passport booth. And thank you all so much for being here and sharing all your really inspiring thoughts. Are there any questions from the public?
I'm particularly kind of interested in knowing what happens in the secondary market, say, like on a global scale, when an artist is able to sell their work and without a gallery, how the secondary market has gone on to value the work of the artist outside of the white cube. Because I think for an investor in art, I think the view of a gallerist tends to be quite significant in the way people view art as investment. So I just want to understand how your artists have navigated that space, and just to get an idea, or if you've got any insight, that would be great. Thank you.
Uh, yes, I totally agree that the galleries has huge influence on sort of like the secondary market. But I think as artists ourselves, we literally have, because now what we own is only the intellectual property. Usually our names are on those artworks and in the auction catalogs. But the physical objects has left my studio and it's in new hands. I'd had a discussion with a collector regarding an artist who they had put on auction, and they had said they had personal reasons, what they would let, because for them the artwork was part of their property, and there was a situation, I think it was a divorce. So there's very much many reasons that collectors put artworks on the auction market, which is beyond the control of the artist per se. Even though the artworks might have been bought from the studio or from a gallery or during an art fair. And I think the main thing that many one auction house, at least in South Africa, is trying to do is to get some form of compensation to the artists as a percentage of the sale, to just help encourage the artists to benefit from the sale of their works on auction. But honestly, I think the auction market is very much a whole area that artists really do not have much influence, because it literally is very much commercial and very much looking at um, some form of return, which for us, the return we literally give our audience is the aesthetic return. We're not even looking at financial return. We're saying, live with our artworks. The return you're getting is more than financial. It's the artwork itself, the aesthetics, the ideas, the stories that I'm trying to highlight in my work, is some form of investment that you would have made.
I think the secondary market is a gamble for every artist, whether you are signed by a gallery or represented by a gallery or independent, or control once the artwork is bought, unless the gallery is trying to increase your market value through the auction, which is something that does happen often. What we try to do is to encourage our artists that when they do sell artworks, to have a contract with the buyers that perhaps should they put forth the work that they bought during auction, they have to be notified. Yes, I might not have a say whether you are selling the artwork or not, but then you need to give notification to the artist that the artwork has been sold, so that should by the time maybe you are represented by a gallery and they specifically want to control the market, and usually then that gallery will partake in that auction and buy that artwork in order to keep your market value uh, as an artist aligned. And if perhaps the artwork was a gift and it wasn't bought, then the contract would perhaps stipulates that you cannot resell the artwork for the next 5 years or the next 10 years, depending on the requirements of the artist. But it will encourage our artists to have agreements with buyers. Some buyers agree, some buyers don't agree, but then you'll never know unless you put it forward.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much for sharing. I'm interested in, as artist-led organizations, a lot of your work focuses on artists, and I'm like yourself, developing them and helping them to develop their careers. How much of your work, or what is the nature of your work when it comes to today's point, collectors or art lovers more generally? Like, what else are you doing in the community? I'm really interested to know a bit more about that.
I mean, I can go first, but I think because we don't really represent artists, like we more provide like mediation programs. So I think it's more for art lovers. If you, it's hybrid is a way how you can participate in the art world with like in a. So we always try to create environments that everyone feels welcome and invited, and oftentimes we see ourselves as hosts. And it's very similar to like when we um have an event. So we have events, and I mean, we're located in Basel, so most of our work is here. We're very conscious of how we have it's like inviting someone over to your house. So I think the idea of hosting for us is how we give back to the art world. But I think we don't represent any artists or like me sell anything, but we really it's a mediation. So I think the hosting is what I can it say is how we give back to art lovers at least.
I think for us, it's yes, we have like a mentorship program and a residency, but then when we host workshops, because we do focused workshops on like business administration, financial management, tax, SaaS, professional practice, branding, also mental health and well-being workshops. And for us, those workshops are open to the public, not just the artists that we work with. So we have found that even people outside of the art industry apply for the workshops, and then it's like a whole network of people that we collaborate with and have influence over. But then I think also as we are all individually artists, and I think we have our personal projects that contribute to the landscape individually.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. And we have sort of noticed at ArtHarare that we actually have a new type of collector for much more younger, tech savvy, sort of ones that have are looking for something that speaks to them as well. And those type of artists, those type of sort of collectors or aspiring young collectors are the ones that gravitate towards ArtHarare because we also have a digital platform. The artists we work to are speaking to topics and ideas that that young audience is responding to. So then we create a platform for them to meet, for them to start having the idea of collecting art as something, whether it's an investment or someone has bought a new apartment. I'll give an example of a developer in Cape Town who has been one of our supporters at ArtHarare. He's a developer in one of the tech companies in Cape Town and has never bought an artwork his whole life. But he had the resources and he ended up stumbling at the gallery and has more than 5 artworks. So it's those type of relationships that I think these institutions also create because we are in those spaces. The continent, Cape Town, Harare, much of the continent has a young demographic. And I think those are the people we need to encourage to then sustain much of these sort of artist-led organizations, which I'm sure will, over the years, 10, 20 years, actually become the institutions where art collections are created for. Thank you.
Okay. Well, then I think we'll close here. Thank you one more time to our panelists for being here, for taking the time, and for all the insights. And now, have a lovely day. Go buy some art and see you around. Thank you so much.